Destination Out by Jackie McLean is a super cool post-bop album just because of how unique it is. It never goes where you expect it to. McLean is a great saxophonist, but he's not as good as a lot of other legends like Hank Mobley or John Coltrane, so he makes up for that with some interesting song structures that don't need him to go on crazy solos. It's not the most crazy and abstract thing in the world, but it still stays entertaining throughout and will have you bopping your head. It can get avant-garde at times, but it's not too experimental that it turns you off. It's just a perfect amount of uniqueness that it makes it enjoyable and fun. Jazz Impressions of Japan is a Dave Brubeck Quartet album, one of the most acclaimed cool jazz groups of all time. And that is well deserved because they are so great at capturing that mellow and smooth sound, better than really anyone except Miles Davis and maybe Bill Evans in my opinion. Brubeck is a great pianist, and he shows that throughout this whole album. Paul Desmond, Joe Morello, and Eugene Wright are all great on here as well, but really the main appeal of this thing is that nice piano sound. It's super chill and just puts me in a relaxed mood better than most of his group's albums. This one is seriously underrated in their catalog. It's probably my second favorite behind Time Out. Lee Morgan is a trumpeter that I'm not as big of a fan of as most people. I often think that he tries to go for this grand style with incredible complexity, and he just doesn't deliver fully, which is a problem I have with a lot of old trumpeters, except Miles Davis. But the Sidewinder is the closest he got to really creating something spectacular, at least in my opinion. Yeah, this thing is just super impressive from a technical standpoint, with a high tempo and fast-paced style that will have you super impressed and also entertained. The title track especially is just really fun with some awesome hard bop, with a bit of soul added to it as well. I don't think this is anyone's favorite jazz album. It doesn't really go above and beyond, but Morgan does as much as he possibly can with his talents, and that's why it's his best album. Empyrean Isles is Herbie Hancock's best album of the 60s. Hancock can get absolutely wild on a lot of his stuff, and to be honest, it doesn't always stick the landing for me. Albums like Sextant and Maiden Voyage are things that I have never really enjoyed as much as others, but this album totally clicks for me, just because it feels accessible. It's before he really started experimenting like crazy, and was a bit more simple, which I just personally like. There's a reason this is his most popular release, other than maybe Headhunters, which is his best album by quite a bit. But yeah, this album is really just a fun time. He shows his piano skills without getting too crazy with the synths and electric stuff, and he creates some legit great hard bop music, especially Cantaloupe Island, which is just great and one of his best tracks. Night Dreamer by Wayne Shorter was the start of his generational run from 1964 to 1967. This is probably the worst of those 5 albums, but it's damn awesome. Shorter worked with legendary musicians like Art Blakey and the previously mentioned Lee Morgan, but in my eyes his saxophone outshined all of them, except maybe Blakey's drums on a good day. I just think he's incredible in a technical sense, and he created such a lush and pretty atmosphere that very few jazzers can do. A good calm jazz album can reach the same level of any energetic hard bop album, and this is one of the absolute best calm jazz albums. It really captures the feeling of a lonely night perfectly. Out to Lunch by Eric Dolphy is really weird, but it is also really awesome. It's a very avant-garde album with some incredible performances by the contributors here. Freddie Hubbard, Bobby Hutcherson, Richard Davis, and Anthony Williams all complement Dolphy and his multiple instruments. Dolphy is a saxophonist, flutist, and a bass clarinetist, if that's a word, I don't even know, which is the instrument he's most famous for, as he helped popularize it being used in jazz music. This album is as weird and creative as the best of Mingus, but I think it's more accessible and leans more to the post-bop side of things. It's really fun and will have you shocked the whole time at the weird directions it goes in. There's many moments like the part in Hat and Beard where random fierce drumming comes in during a trumpet solo and then just leaves again, and in Gazzaloni when there's an incredible and lengthy flute solo. It's just awesome. Mingus is one of Charles Mingus's most complex and technical albums, and that's saying a lot. It's not quite the Black Saint and the Sinner Lady, but it's in the same realm for me, probably my second favorite of his. I've talked a lot about this dude and his incredible talent and ability to make everyone around him better, and this is really just another addition in that catalog, and another reason why he's one of the best to ever do it. This one does show his bass talent more than most though, and it does create a warmer and more calming vibe than some of his earlier stuff, which is why I would put it over in Oh Yeah or a Blues and Roots. But you really can't go wrong with Mingus. He's damn incredible, and so is this album.
Oh, the times they are a-changin'.
The Times They Are A-Changin' is the first of Dylan's albums I think is incredible. I like the freewheeling, I put it in my list for 1963, but this one feels a lot more important. And what I mean by that is I was really affected by some of these tracks and the politics it brought to the table. Dylan is a protester in his music, mainly to war in a lot of his earlier stuff, but I think Dylan knew this stuff would transcend just war. The title track is a perfect example of why I believe Dylan had some messages people missed out on when he first came out with them. The title track works for anything, and it will forever. The times are always going to be changing, and this song's messages outside the ageless title are also ahead of its time and are more important now than ever. Don't criticize what you don't understand. Don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin, and there's no telling who that it's naming. Some of the most genius lyrics anyone has ever wrote. It might just be the song that will stand the test of time the most, out of anything, and it is an absolute masterpiece. The whole album is great too, but the title track is one of the best songs ever, so that's the biggest reason it hits the top 3. Crescent feels like one of John Coltrane's most passionate albums, and it's one of his best. You can feel Coltrane's passion and love for music in everything he makes, but this one really just makes me feel connected to this man's music. Like sometimes you just have to sit and appreciate how otherworldly of a talent this dude was. Like his saxophone skills and ability to create gripping and powerful song structures is really matched by very few, as well as the diversity he had throughout his career. He's one of the most important musical figures of all time, and it's not hard to see why when you just sit and listen to his music. McCoy Turner, Jimmy Garrison, and Elvin Jones especially with his incredible drumming also make this thing a great listen, but Coltrane will always be the best thing about anything he ever makes, and this is one of the best things he's ever been a part of. It's just remarkable and beautiful. It feels straight from the heart. Volume 2, Death Chants, Breakdowns, and Military Waltzes is John Fahey's first incredible album. This is his first appearance on these videos, but it won't be his last, as he is one of my favorite artists of the 60s, and really just all time. I love the shit out of this dude. Like I have a damn spiritual connection to his work, it feels like. He's an American primitivism artist, using his acoustic guitar to paint pictures of a time that none of us have ever lived in, but he's so much more than just that. His music makes me feel so warm and comfortable, like it soothes me more than anyone else. It's hard to explain. I can distinguish this guy's guitar even if it sounds similar to others of the genre. I think he's just that talented and passionate, as well as a remarkable songwriter. Its bluesy style of guitar playing is not only technically mind-blowing, as he's one of the best acoustic players ever, but he also makes it feel so melodic and almost lonely in a way. But it's not a bad lonely, it's a warm and beautiful type of lonely. It's bittersweet in the best way possible. This album is hypnotizing. It feels like I'm being shown a bunch of video footage of some form of old-style America, and then it teleports me back into that time period. This album feels like a painting, and it makes me feel something more than any other album did this year. The craziest thing is that this is not even close to Fahey's best album.